Hey guys, we are live here coming to you from Los Angeles, the Vinyl Rundown channel, but I have a very special guest with us today, James Zimmermann, clarinetist from Nashville. Hey James, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So this story has blown up in the last week, and when I saw the news articles come across on Instagram, I thought this is not going to be a major story. I want to interview this guy and help him broadcast it. And lo and behold, in the last couple of days, he's done several major media outlets, Megyn Kelly and a few others, but they have been sort of from the political point of view. And my show, you guys know I'm about music. I'm a huge jazz and classical fan. And I also want to bring in the music aspect of this and even the legal aspect, which that's my first question to you. Your lawyer is okay with you going on and having all these discussions, that there's no problem with that?
Yeah, just staying on message and
Okay. Okay.
being clear about what we're asking for in the lawsuit
Okay.
and
So,
what our intentions are.
okay. I always see lawyers say, don't talk about a lawsuit in progress, but the story is the story and it's all over the internet. So James, you're a professional clarinetist and this whole thing blew up via the recent audition for you to try to get the lead spot in the Nashville Orchestra. So when I didn't mean to say Nashville, Knoxville, two cities with an N sound in Tennessee. I'm going to ADD screw that up completely. Knoxville, Tennessee. So you'll tell us that story, but I also think people don't understand the blind audition process, which is kind of a unique thing to classical music. So tell us what happened in Knoxville, but make sure you explain what the blind audition is. So let us go for it.
Sure. So, yeah, I live in Nashville. I'm a studio musician now. I've
Mhm.
played all over Netflix and video games and movies and theme parks. And there's a much better chance that you've heard my playing than that you haven't heard my playing.
Mhm.
So, I also work in big tech. Since 2020. I was in the Nashville Symphony for 12 years. I was ousted in 2020. We'll get to that in a minute.
Ousted. Wow.
But a friend of mine from the Knoxville Symphony, which is about 3 hours east of me, reached out and he said, "Hey, man, I've been following everything that's gone on with you. I think it's all ridiculous. And I don't know if you're looking to get back into the game, but we've got a principal clarinet audition here in September. You should come out." And the idea of doing that wouldn't leave my mind. I just couldn't forget about this suggestion of his. So I figured, all right, if I win this job in Knoxville, I'll figure out a way to go back and forth. Maybe I'll get a second place out there or something, because Knoxville is more of a regional orchestra. I would have to keep my tech job, but I foresaw a way in my mind to make it work. But if I was going to even have the chance to make it work, I had to win the blind audition. So a blind audition is where you send your resume to an orchestra. They look at your qualifications. For mine, they saw that I had tons of experience in a more prestigious orchestra here in Nashville. I'm a session player. I'm still very active. And they had every chance at that point to look into, why aren't you in an orchestra now? What happened with your departure from Nashville? But they didn't do that. I thought they may have, or I thought if they did, they wouldn't care, because that was a long time ago. And the story is obviously political in nature and a giant Jussie Smollett style stunt that was pulled by my ex colleagues. But they
Was that
invited
like
me out.
10 years ago or 5 years ago? Just getting
Yeah, it
a
was
feel for
20.
how long
The
ago.
whole thing started in 2019, my
Okay.
ousting.
So
So,
5 or 6
this
years
is
ago.
we're in different times now.
Right.
So I started getting into shape, Olympic fighting shape for an audition. I mean, it takes several days for an orchestra to host one of these things. People coming in from all over the country, playing one after the other behind a screen on stage alone, for a panel of judges that have no idea who you are, where you came from, how much experience you have, if you're a man or a woman, if you're black or white, or if you're left or right leaning politically. They have no idea who you are. The only judgment is on your playing, purely on merit. So that is very important when judging how to populate an orchestra. They're desirable jobs. It's fun to play music for money. It's sure beats working. I know that now for sure. Not that I don't love tech for all of its advantages, but it's not really what I do. It's not really who I am. So that's what I did. I said, I'll start at square one, just like any other contestant for this thing. And I went out there, and after 3 rounds of auditioning spread over 2 days, I was unanimously declared the winner in September. And the audition coordinator introduced me to what I thought were going to be my future colleagues. And he said he'd call me the next day and get me on the payroll in a couple of weeks. And the next call I got was the day after that from their CEO saying, we looked into your employment in Nashville Symphony, and based on a few things that came to our attention, we're not going to hire you here. So we're also not going to talk to you about this. Our decision is final. So best of luck to you. Which left me with 2 options. Either walk away with my tail between my legs or take legal action. And I chose the latter.
Okay, so let me just chime in here. This blind audition is a thing that I think is unique to classical music, and it's the most meritorious way of hiring somebody on the whole planet. Okay, you have to be invited to blind audition via your resume.
Yes. So the blind audition is a piece of the hiring process. It's the most important piece of the hiring process. The first step is you send your resume, and at that point, an orchestra will usually put you in one of 2 categories. Number 1, they look at your resume and they say, this guy's definitely qualified to audition here. We'll bring him in. Or if your resume is a little sparse, like if you're young or in college, they say, we're not sure. Why don't you send a brief recording of yourself playing? And we'll determine from that if you have any kind of realistic chance. In other words, we don't want to waste your time. If this is what you sound like with unlimited tries to submit your best playing, we'll tell you if you're in your ballpark. And if you are, you can come out. So that's number 1, the resume/tape round. Then there's the blind audition process, which the winner is typically awarded a 1-year contract in the orchestra, a probationary year in which they determine, hey, are you an actually good player, or are you just good at the audition process of sitting on stage alone in an empty concert hall playing short excerpts from symphonies? The blind audition doesn't tell the orchestra if you are punctual, if you have a good personality, if you are dependable in prime time. So that's what I was expecting to get next in the Knoxville Symphony, was the probationary year where they could figure out if they actually liked me. You know, sometimes a person is a really good auditioner and they come in and they're not so good in prime time, and they don't end up getting the position permanently. So that was where the process stopped for me. They didn't ask me, hey, James, you know, we found some sordid history in your employment past. You want to explain any of this? You want to tell us your side of any of this? You know, we have some concerns. They didn't do that. They just shut me down immediately, made it final. So that's very disappointing. They could have easily seen, if they had the right set of eyes, that the whole thing was overblown and fake, but they chose not to go that way.
So your case, and I briefly read the actual complaint, not that I'm a lawyer, but your case is really about, I think, discrimination, because they wanted to hire someone who was not white. They hired someone who was black. That's a discrimination. That's a valid discrimination lawsuit. But did they just not hire you because they didn't like your behavior from the past? To me, that's not a necessarily discrimination. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I want the best person to win, because that's how we keep art and music at its highest level. It's a meritorious type of venture when we're listening to you and not being biased by watching you. What does he look like? What skin color he is? No, we just heard him, and he is unanimously, every judge said, you're the best. But then they went and looked at the past and said, well, you know, maybe he's not going to get along with people. I don't know what they said, and you don't know what they said, and they didn't give you an opportunity to go into that. So, you know, your comments on, you know, what happened next, and you know, my comments, if you have any reaction to that.
So you're absolutely right to play devil's advocate. You know, discriminating against me on skin color versus my past are 2 separate issues. But if you look at it from a high enough vantage point, we're making the claim that, you know, my past and the incidents they're referring to are part of a larger picture where they do not want to hire somebody who is not sufficiently committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. And they saw once they looked at the winner, and my runner-up that they ended up hiring, he's an Asian young man. I don't know him. I hear he's a very good player, and it's no small feat to come in second place in one of these auditions either.
He's not even black. I assumed he was black.
No, he's not.
He's Asian.
But
Okay.
which is, I mean, Asians, as a side note, they get kind of used however their ideological leaders of institutions want to use them. They can be viewed as non-white for, I understand diversity to mean less white guys. I'll just come right out and say it. I've heard it explicitly stated when the DEI types have been talking about we need to play less music of dead white men. You hear this in academia. We're looking to make artistic culture less Eurocentric. All these buzzwords are about, clearing out whiteness. We live in a system of white supremacy, and anybody that pushes against this ideology is a white fragility. All this stuff boils down to we want fewer white people. So they saw an excuse to lower the number of white people in their orchestra. That's the claim we're making. So
you opened my eyes to something that went on here. It's not that you were too white, it's that you weren't ideologically on board with the concept. If you had walked in and apologized and said, actually I'm white, but I'm with you, they might have had a different, yeah. So
we can go into what happened in Nashville, but I'm pro meritocracy. I'm an ambassador for meritocracy in music. And I openly do not care about the racial makeup of an orchestra. I suppose some people would say that's just evidence of my own privilege and of my own tone deafness, but I don't care if women win auditions. I don't care if African Americans win auditions. It just doesn't matter to me. I want to play with the best players regardless.
I'm a listener in two broad areas: classical music, white, rich people. Let's face it, the orchestra halls are altars to the richest, whitest people, and they are controlled by high society, very wealthy white people who are the donors and the patrons of classical music. On the other hand, I'm a huge fan of jazz, which is a black music primarily, although academics have sort of taken over and whitened it up. But my point, there was a point. I'm happy to see, I would love to see more minorities love and embrace and enjoy classical music. There's not much impetus to do that. Black young generations today don't know what classical music is. They don't seem to care. I would love them to embrace Beethoven and Mozart if they don't want to. So now an outsider is coming in and saying, as minorities, you really should get involved in this music that's not part of your culture, that you might not even care about. Like if you went and grabbed a bunch of kids in a music magnet high school and said, how many of you, we want you guys to all go into classical music. And I'm like, why are you making us do that? So anyway, my point is there's outside forces when do-gooders come in and say, we want to enlighten you. And the people are saying, we're cool as is. You know what I'm saying? So that's
a good point. And this has been a huge effort by orchestras for decades now, is to reach into the communities where classical music hasn't gotten any exposure. And I've been part of that since college, outreach programs, providing lessons and concerts to the underserved communities. I used to be the literal poster child for this in Nashville. Like we partnered with a local community music school, and there were pamphlets that went around with me teaching a lesson to a young Black student. And that was one of many things that some of the takeover types started to object to in the late 2010s when they saw this stuff. Like, why are we using a white man to teach young Black students? that's oppressive. He's just going to further his right-wing ideology in those places, which couldn't be further from the truth. I actually did not grow up a classical musician myself. My background is in theater and dance and jazz. I was a child Broadway actor. I was a voiceover singer and a tap dancer, professional tap dancer. That's how I got onto Broadway. So I grew up. What's that?
I wouldn't have guessed you were a tap dancer.
Yeah, I mean, if people dig far enough into my past, they'll find even more interesting stuff to do with show business. And, I managed to win an audition for a Broadway show in 1992 where 400 people showed up for 3 jobs because I was a good singer and dancer. And that, I'm a show tunes musician, which has a ton of jazz influence. And I agree with the point you made earlier. Jazz is America's only homegrown tradition. Everything else that we have is imported from elsewhere, but jazz was born here, and it's born largely out of the Black community. And I never cared about any of this growing up. Like a lot of my heroes, like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, players like that, I didn't think for 1 second about whether they were white or black. I was just listening purely to the music. Who cares? I still don't care. I mean, I do care. Here's what I do care about, and I'm very much on board with this. If there is some kind of bias baked into the audition system that is preventing really talented Black players from joining orchestras, then that is a loss for the art form. So we need to do anything possible to eliminate that. That's why in the late 2010s, when the orchestra went into union contract negotiations, I got myself elected to our board of representatives, and I said, we need to make blind auditions blind from the very beginning to the very end. Because up until 2018, we were taking the screen down in the finals. So when the audition is down to like 3 players, then the conductor gets to see the resumes. He gets to see where you're from. He gets to see if you're a man or a woman, or if you're black or white. And we were being told by some of our Black players that we've been hiring on a temporary basis without auditions that this is really bad. This is where the racism happens in the finals of an audition. Like they see that we're Black. They don't want us because this is a white supremacist, predominantly white institution, and we need those screens. And I bought that immediately. It's like, yeah, bias is not good. I mean, there's all kinds of biases. Race is an obvious one, but there's age bias, there's gender bias, there's physiognomy bias. Like if you see a person who's obviously obese, let's say,
or beauty bias.
Yeah, exactly.
We would love to have a bunch of beautiful looking people up there, male or female, black or white. Look,
absolutely.
No one wants to pay to sit and see an UGMO, let's say.
You are absolutely right. This is why auditions need to be blind, because we only want the best players. So as soon as this narrative was hatched inside of the industry, auditions need to be blind from the beginning to the end. I said, absolutely. I'm going to advocate for that hardcore. And that was not a hard one to win in negotiations. Our symphony management in Nashville, our musicians wanted it. Our conductor was resistant to it, but we won him over and said, too bad, we're blind.
And I mentioned it before, but the old stodgy white world of classical music is maybe the only place on the planet where this blind, unbiased audition and hiring process exists. That's kind of ironic and counterintuitive. The only other place it exists is running a 100-meter dash. You either did it or you didn't do it, and no amount of. And anyway, continue. I keep interrupting, but so we're going to eventually kind of get around to what happened in previous things that caused them to say, "You're not hired."
Yeah. This is a good time to get into that. So around this same time where blind auditions were fully instituted, we had a temporary player that was hired to play principal oboe, a black guy who didn't have to take a blind audition to get this temporary job. He had been out auditioning. He had been in the finals of 15 auditions, which is an extraordinary number to get to the finals 15 times and never seal the deal, which he said was largely because of racism. He was well-trained. Went to Juilliard, extremely talented young man. But my contention was, okay, while there might have been a little racism, like you've got serious flaws in your playing, like when you're on stage and you need to take responsibility for those. Here's what you need to work on. And I think if you work on these things, you will win the job. The job you are playing, principal oboe of the Nashville Symphony, when the blind audition happens, because he was playing the job. Then we were going to invite, hundreds of people to send their resume, fly to Nashville, listen to them for 2 straight days. He had to win that job, or win that audition, to keep the job and get onto tenure track. So I coached him at my house. I told him over and over, man, I want you to win this, because, while I didn't care that he was Black, we certainly had a lot of loud voices on the outside saying orchestras needed to get more diverse. And if we had been the first orchestra to hire a Black principal oboist in Music City, that would have been a huge win for us. We could have put him on advertising. We could have sent him out to any community to be an ambassador for us. I figured this would be a win-win. So people had reservations about his playing, and my job, being directly underneath the principal oboe in score order, I always had to listen to him and harmonize with him. And I said, he's a little difficult sometimes, but whatever. It's no big deal. Like, if he gets the job, I'm willing to work a little bit harder to so that we can say we have the first Black principal oboist. This is fine. And he had good personality. He's very magnetic, handsome. He had so many good qualities. So he gets ready for the audition, and I'm really along the way trying to give him this message, like, look, it's not racism that's the biggest problem here. It's you. You need to take ownership of this, and you need to calm down. Like, when we're on stage together, you are trying too hard. You sound like a guy with an axe to grind. You sound angry. And I took some kind of...
In his playing, you felt that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can tell when somebody's not at ease. You can tell
Angry
when somebody's uptight and, just forcing. So I said, just stop with that in the audition. Just chill, man. And just play like you play when you're by yourself. Like, he a couple weeks beforehand, he played for me. We did this several times. He played for me alone. He played through the audition repertoire. And I looked at my sheet of comments my sheet of notes. It was almost completely empty. I was like, I have nothing to say to you. If you show up to this audition and play like that, you're going to win. Like, you don't sound like this when we're at work in front of an audience playing. But right now in this audition, this is the perfect audition right here. You go and play like this, you're going to be very difficult to beat. And I was really on his side. I was his ally, because we heard a lot about white allyship back then, that we need to stand behind our Black players. I was totally happy to do it. I was gunning for the guy. So the blind audition happens. He goes behind the screen just like everybody else. We have no idea who he is. It's too hard to tell once you've listened to 75 oboists over the course of 2 days. It's impossible to pick out anybody. Like, it's not like this guy would play and I'd say, oh yeah, that's definitely him. I recognize him. I had no idea. They kind of all start to sound the same after a while.
Everyone gets to pick out their own piece, or they have to play a pre-programmed piece?
It's a predetermined list of excerpts and solos that we ask in each round of the audition. Every person plays the same repertoire to keep it consistent.
Right. Nobody's showing off their favorite. Hey, I can play that better, but nothing else.
So he goes through that process, and he is the last man standing in the audition. Behind a screen, we are deliberating, what do we do with this person? Because it wasn't a slam dunk audition where, like mine was in Knoxville, where they all said, we love this guy. We want to give him a 1-year contract right now. Sometimes you get to the end of an audition, say you have 2 players and you can't decide between the 2 of them. You might say, we're going to invite each one of these players in for a week to see how they play in the orchestra, and then we'll choose after that. Or even if you have just 1 player left, you can say, before we extend a 1-year contract to this player, let's bring them in for a week or 2 and see if they're any good and if we want to hire them for another year, or we could just have another audition. This is all standard operating procedure. That's the direction we were going with this Black player we've been playing with. Let's give him a trial week. Accidentally, while we're deliberating what to do, we found out from a management person that it was him. And immediately my colleagues and my conductor turned on the guy. They said, oh no, he's been playing with us for 2 years. I've heard him play 100 concerts. He's not up to snuff. So what we're going to do, we're going to declare this audition a no hire. And this secret about what we're doing is never going to leave this room. This is a blessing in disguise. We never have to play with this guy again.
So they had a history with him already.
Yeah, he'd been playing for 2 years.
And they didn't know whether this was a new person or an old Okay, that threw me also. I mean,
Yeah,
you
so
probably said it and I don't pay attention, but
no,
so
it's
blind
complicated.
audition is not necessarily new people. It's old and new people.
That's right.
And
So
they
our
said, "Oh,
guy
wait a
was in
minute.
there in the pool of candidates, competing against everybody else, and we kept voting for him.
Oh, it turns
So
out we don't like him
yeah, so
for
that
whatever
was
reason."
that's what it boiled down to. And I wasn't. I mean, I knew of the reasons. He had some shortcomings, but I was not about to stand for my conductor and my colleagues rolling on the guy. So I lost the argument in the audition, but I stayed up half the night writing this very convincing and strongly worded email to my colleague saying, tomorrow we're going to barge into the maestro's office and get this decision reversed because this is totally unethical. It's totally wrong. And it's just inexcusable to treat people
Well,
like this.
is it unethical because they found out he was black, or they just didn't like him because he was a pain in the neck to work with? Isn't that a valid reason to not hire someone if somebody has an ego and they're a narcissist and they
True.
cause a lot of drama, or they're
But
late or whatever?
to lie about it is the problem.
Okay.
To declare the audition a no hire and pretend we never heard about it. We should have just given him the trial week, which is what
Hmm.
we ended up doing. We said, "Hey man, we're putting you on trial. Here's your designated week a month from now." And unfortunately, he crumbled under the pressure. He did not perform well at all. And management hired him unilaterally without the vote of the musicians, which was what he needed. And from that point on, he was stamped as the DEI hire for eternity because he was given the job permanently without the same process as everyone else. He got special treatment. And they did that for him because if they didn't, he was going to sue the orchestra for trying to get rid of him illegally. So it was a blackmail situation. And then that player and one of his friends turned on me, launched this huge Jussie Smollett-like campaign against me where I was harassing them, even though I'd stuck up for him and given him all this free coaching, that I was stalking them because they lived in my same neighborhood and one of them wasn't comfortable with the fact that I drove by his house on the way to work every day, which I'd been doing long before he was in the orchestra. It sounds too preposterous to be real, but the whole story is out there. I'm tired of telling it. And I would be perfectly happy to never talk about this again, except for the fact that it eventually spilled out into civil court. And they took legal action against me and got orders of protection against me because the symphony fired me. They determined I was dangerous. All blackmail, by the way. The symphony knew better, but they wanted to protect their own reputation. So they threw me under the bus. And it wasn't enough for them to just make me unemployed. They want me to be unemployable. They spent the whole pandemic grandstanding about how anti-racist they are. Look what we did to this terrible clarinet player. We got rid of him. We rooted out our problems and we're so righteous. And now all orchestras are behaving this way, largely because they look at the precedent set by how they treated me. And
Well,
there we are.
how did they go from you're an ally for this black musician to get hired to you're the reason why he didn't get, what was their argument to come out against you? You
They
wrote the
thought,
letter, but the letter was in support of him.
yeah, no one ever asked them that. Why did you do this? No one has ever asked these players, why did you go against the one guy that stuck up for you? Why did you destroy the one person who is responsible for you still working here? No one ever asks that. They look at the fact that I am on the wrong side of the DEI issue, which, like I said, I'm not against diversity itself. I'm against people screwing around with the blind audition process. I'm against diversion from the meritocracy. And I'm even willing to do a little extra work to diversify the orchestra. That no one's job was more affected by this guy's narcissism and mania than mine, being the principal clarinet, right under the oboe.
Okay.
So I was willing to do it all. But this guy just launched a tirade, and it was really something impressive. And now, it's a Rorschach test for people when they look at me. Some people want to see me, an angry guy that wrote a hot-headed email to a colleague. There were no threats in this email. Like Megyn Kelly actually read some of it on the air the other day. That's the only place it's ever been made public. And Megyn said, this is so obvious what they did to you. Like they made it up, just like Jussie Smollett made it up. Like that guy hired people to mug him. This is how deranged these people we are. Like, I don't think people are really prepared yet still all these years later to believe just how far these wackos are willing to go to get what they want. You got to respect it in a way. They will debase themselves so far to just be on the side, what they think is the right side of history. And right now, you got to hand it to them. They're winning. I'm still on the outside looking in.
Well, I don't know if they're winning globally, because there's quite a tide turning against them. They may be winning in your micro world of orchestras, because
But still, that is my world. Like
right,
it is, and some
your
people
world.
on X are looking into the fact that Harmeet Dillon from the Civil Rights Department of the federal government is looking into the case,
Mm.
publicly stating that on X. And people are like, why do we care about some stupid clarinet player in a little orchestra in Tennessee? Why is that the priority? Well, it's the priority because hundreds of thousands of taxpayer money are going into this stuff, and this stuff, this anti-whiteness campaign, this kill Beethoven campaign, replace it with new indigenous music that's commissioned of Black composers campaign, is being taken into schools. It's being taken into audiences, and the arts are what move people's hearts and minds. Like the experience of being at a live symphony orchestra concert is very powerful. Something that we should be protecting that in this country. And that is really what I'm trying to do now in speaking out against it. How can we save this beautiful art form that has existed for centuries from being sacrificed on the altar of DEI? It's not smart.
And I think we have to keep clarifying, diversity is great, but it has to be done ethically. It has to not destroy people. And when it becomes an overarching ideology that it's diversity at all costs, we don't care who we destroy, it's crossed many lines. I often say, you know what, I've showed up at this thing, whatever it is, and it's all white faces. How come it's all white faces? In my professional groups and my work, and there's a way to bring in diversity, which is from the ground up, right?
Yeah.
And let's expose people to this great music, as opposed to let's from the top down say, I'm going to pluck this person and just drop them in whether they belong or not. We can advocate and nourish people in inner city schools to love classical music, and maybe you've done that. And I've been
Absolutely.
to programs that were designed to bring arts, jazz, classical music to minorities, inner cities, etc. We're nurturing it from the ground up. We're not just arbitrarily saying, we're taking over here. You're bad.
Yeah.
Get out, white guy.
That's not the right way to do it. So here's an interesting fact. Blind auditions are a relatively recent innovation. They've been around for 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
And musicians were pushing for them, because before that, orchestras were kind of a good old boys club where you couldn't get in unless you had the right pedigree, if you had the right connections, your parents had enough money to enroll you in lessons. So there are many talented people being barred from the opportunity to get into an orchestra. So they said, all right, let's institute this. And orchestras at that point, I should say, are mostly white men.
Mm-hmm.
So they put the screens up, they let anybody show up and audition. And a generation later, orchestras are 50-50 male-female. What that tells us is that there was a lot of sexism in the previous generation, that putting up a blind screen eliminates that sexism. But very few people want to ask, why did it not help minorities as much as it did women? And it's like you said earlier, like maybe there's just not as much interest in certain communities in classical music. So that's the place you want to attack the issue. You want to bring the music to people who haven't had the opportunity to hear it yet. That's something that I have done tons of in college. There was tons of grant money I had through this thing called the Young Musicians Foundation, where I taught lessons in inner city Los Angeles schools for years to Hispanics, Blacks, everything. We brought it everywhere. And we would find some extremely talented people there. Did it here at the W.O. Smith School in Nashville. We used to have a partnership with them. That's a free lessons school, but the symphony had some money to send in players from the symphony to teach there. I did that for many, many years and had incredibly worthwhile experiences, keeping kids off the streets, quite literally, like bringing kids into this music school after school instead of them going to their single parent homes, and every once in a while these kids would melt down in their lessons because their father's in jail or something like this. And I got to know the issues very deeply doing this type of outreach. Music is very positive and influential. I'm in favor of all that. I will disagree with what you said a minute ago. You said diversity is good. I used to say that. Now my position is I don't care. I want to make sure that everyone has access and let the chips fall where they may. In the case of this oboist that we were talking about, this guy ran through a blind audition and beat everybody, and he deserved to win. And my objection to the whole process was he was hired without the confirmation of his musician colleagues, which means he has received special treatment. The blackmail was all there. His subsequent story to destroy me was very transparent and obvious. So many of my colleagues are on the record defending my position on this. And now the symphony tunes up to a diversity hire. It's sickening. He didn't need to be treated like that. But, the CEO made a tough decision. We're going to get behind this guy and do whatever he says. Because if we don't, he's going to sue the orchestra for discrimination. It's, like I said, it's complicated, it's deep, but trying to go a little higher level, we need to make sure that music is available to all. I would say you and I agree on that. Jazz, classical, everybody should have a chance to drink from the fountain of all that this country has to offer. There's so much good music that has arisen out of America, pop and jazz, and everything is here.
Absolutely. So, not that I'm going to go do this, but is the person who's the center of the oboe controversy, did his career go well after this? And
oh yeah,
and would he come on here and talk to me? If I invited him on here, would he have a completely different story that's
Yeah, he's going to tell you that I harassed him, and I in a joking manner after a concert once. We're both huge hip hop fans. I rapped all the way through a Notorious B.I.G. song because that's what we both grew up listening to, and I quoted the soft ending of the N-word in front of him. He said he wanted to hear me do it, but he went and ratted me out for stuff like that. That's what he would say. He's looking so hard for evidence of racism, and he found it in me.
Well,
but yeah, his career is extraordinary, way better than I ever had. He's got major teaching positions, summer festival positions, board of director positions.
But
he's famous.
Has he spoken out, gone on the record with an opinion on this whole?
Yeah, his stuff is out there from 2020, in which he was interviewed.
What about the current orchestra? I don't think they've said anything about your lawsuit and
Knoxville.
Yeah,
they did make a statement the other day referring to the stuff that spilled out into civil court, and they confirmed that they had talked to my former employer. So that's all out there, and that's what they're basing this on. They didn't want to look into the details, didn't want to hear my side of it. They said they had some safety concerns. It's all totally fake, completely.
Safety. That's one they can always fall back on.
Safety and harassment.
Safety.
Oh, you said you liked my haircut. You're harassing me because we can't talk about my clothes. We can't talk about my hair. We can't talk about history. I'm going to re-educate you on history, but you can never talk about your own opinion. They're all reading from the same playbook, or should I say, since we're talking about music, they're all singing from the same hymnal. That's a popular saying around here.
Okay, not here in Los Angeles.
You're not in the Bible Belt.
Maybe in the South. No.
Yeah.
I get it. Well, where do we go from here? How is your music world shaping up? You're still doing a lot of studio work, or is this affecting your other job prospects?
Yeah, I'm still working in big tech. Devoting my 40 hours a week to getting better and better at that. It's rewarding in its own way. It requires creativity, and there's stability to it.
But unfortunately, we're basically saying that you're making money out of being a tech guy, not a music guy.
Oh yeah, the lion's share of my income is from tech now. But I teach a little bit, and I'm always looking for musical opportunities. I have a couple contractors who have been loyal to me, will hire me because they think I'm the best clarinet player. So my schedule's full of those two things. And like I said, the Knoxville audition was my plan. There was to see if I could win a job in this smaller orchestra and keep my tech job, maybe go back and forth, figure out a way to make it all work. And that would have been a fun way to live, just be a hybrid tech guy and music and symphony musician without having to move far away from where I now live. I don't want to uproot my family to move to some other city to play in an orchestra. I mean, I think orchestras post COVID are not quite the same as they were before. They're possessed by ideology, and they're not as stable. They're not as relevant. I think they've alienated a lot of people. And not to go too far off the rails here, but I've been looking at what has been happening at what is now called the Trump Kennedy Center, where after Trump was elected, he installed himself as the board chair of the Kennedy Center, fired their old CEO and discovered $26 million of fake money on their books, installed his own guy. They've been cleaning house, renovating the building, renaming the building. And last September, when they had their opening gala, the Nashville Symphony, the in-house orchestra of the Trump Kennedy Center, they raised 3 times as much money as last year. That's because they're tapping into the right-wing donors who have felt alienated for the last 10 years, where they go to concerts and hear about how the orchestras are all racist and white supremacist and inhospitable to women and minorities. And, most people don't want to hear that when they go to a concert. So
But
now they're bringing in some new money.
I didn't know about 26 million fake dollars on the books.
Yeah, there's a Daily Wire story about that.
You're going to expand briefly with that?
Yeah, there was a, I don't know too much about it, but it's a very public story that their former CEO had kind of done some number crunching that wasn't totally kosher, and that was written about. So that's what Trump is trying to clean up. That's what their guys are trying to clean up. And there's now this huge scandal that the Washington National Opera has cut ties with the Trump Kennedy Center as their exclusive opera company. And he's been getting beat up nonstop over there, the CEO of the Trump Kennedy Center. Artists are canceling on him. But what I thought going into Knoxville was, okay, this shows that there's a donor base out there, an audience that can be brought in to symphonies. Like, I firmly believe, based on all the attention my audition prep got on X, that there were a lot of people who were going to come to Knoxville to hear me play if I won that job. They had stated that explicitly. Like, people go to orchestras to hear stars the way they go watch sports to see star players. Like, when the Kansas City Chiefs come to play the Tennessee Titans, people go to see Patrick Mahomes because he's a legendary football player. We can have that same type of thing.
It's reflected in the ticket prices, because I'm looking at the LA Symphony, and we have a lot of classical music opportunities here, and the ticket prices absolutely reflect it's Yo-Yo Ma or it's Shlobo Nobody coming to LA, and the ticket prices are astronomical. And if you're a minority, you can't freaking get to, if you're underprivileged financially, there's no way you can even see classical music at the highest level.
So you ask me now, like, where does my career head from here? Well, now I'm getting some more visibility for what I'm doing. I hate doing this, by the way. I would much rather have just started playing in the Knoxville Symphony in peace, earning money for my kids' college instead of being out here. Not that I mind doing it, because it's important to do, but I would much rather just be playing. So now I'm getting some more visibility on me. My message or whatever is getting out there. And I believe if some orchestra were to take a chance on me, some people would be like, oh yeah, I saw that guy on Megyn Kelly. He's supposedly awesome. I'll go out and see that orchestra. Like, some orchestra needs to roll the dice on me.
You're not the most famous clarinet player on the planet.
I mean,
whether you intended to be or not. And unfortunately, it's not your clarinet playing.
Yeah. I mean, my clarinet playing, I'm taking a lot of hate out there on the internet. I got a lot of trolls, a lot of people hating on me because I'm Jewish, which I'm actually not. I'm Catholic, but they think I'm Jewish because I look Jewish and my name sounds Jewish. So I'm getting all kinds of hate from everybody. They say I'm racist.
I'm Jewish.
All this stuff. But what no one is saying is, you suck at the clarinet. I don't see any of that. anywhere because I'm a proven quantity. I've won blind auditions for the 2 top orchestras in Tennessee. I'm employed by neither orchestra. My playing is everywhere. You can go listen to clips online. No one's saying that this is about the music. It's about my so-called difficult personality and my politics and the fact that I make people feel unsafe in the workplace. I mean, that's what these people will say. Oh, this person voted for Donald Trump. I feel unsafe around that person. How ridiculous.
I don't think, I wish we didn't have to have politics in music.
Me too.
Divisive politics in everything now, because the people on the extremes are riling up everybody when the majority of America just want to go about their business and
Absolutely.
and work and feed their family and have a life. Now, if we didn't have,
keep in mind that the people who did this to me, they didn't at the time, they didn't have wives or children. This is everything to them. I'm a husband and father, a homeowner. They don't have anything like that. They're totally obsessed with their agenda. Like, just chill out and do the things that have made men and women happy for hundreds of years. Get married, have children, go to church, be a member of your community. These things are good for people, it turns out.
Buy some records.
Exactly.
If we didn't have difficult, opinionated people in music, Beethoven, complete a-hole, sued everyone in his family. I could go through the long list. Miles Davis, what a pain in the ass to be.
His autobiography is
Charles
just
Mingus.
Spellbinding. What an awful person. So many of these jazzers, Stan Getz, Jerry Mulligan. So it's difficult because you listen to these guys playing, you're like, man, that is good playing coming out of some of the most horrible sounding people that are imaginable.
And so we're going to smooth out all the bumps in music to try to create this safe space, and then end up with a very bland, uninteresting art form, unfortunately. And the people that run orchestras, I think there's a whole unique group of people. Is this, the committees, and we're upstanding citizens in the community, and we're on the board of directors, and we go to these philanthropy meetings, which, God, I hate to have to sit through. We're trying to get Mrs. Schwartz's to write us $100,000 check, like. So there's this whole weird incestual thing in classical music and old money society that's not really great for art. We don't have this.
So what do we do?
Today.
Are we going to build new orchestras to compete with the ones that are already there, or are we going to take them back from these people? Or are they going to die? That's exactly right. I made that point in my video on X, which is pinned to my profile. It's like, it's either push back against these people or let them sacrifice orchestras on the altar of politics until they're gone completely. And I think a world without orchestras and without the Beethoven symphonies and without all of the things that orchestras have to offer is a much inferior world. And you look at what's going on in the country now, I think there's some decline happening. This is my area to push back, my little micro world, to use your term. This is the world that I live in. So I'm going to use whatever influence I have. Mostly, though, it's not about my politics or my personality or my speech. My best weapon against this insanity is my clarinet playing. And when you put that screen up and you have your pick of the litter, people want me. What does that tell you? They say, oh no, he's got some abhorrent views. He says insane things like women will be happier if they have children than if they go have a spreadsheet job. Like, he's outlandish. That makes all the women feel unsafe. Like, this is who we're dealing with. And I finally lost my patience for it with this whole in the late 2010s and said, you can't be serious. You cannot be serious about all this. Look at what we're doing. So I don't want to sound like I'm ranting. I'm very committed. And yes, I can be difficult, but I can also channel that fire. I'm Italian on my mom's side. My mom is from the same place where The Sopranos happened. I'm from New Jersey. I'm well aware that I can be difficult, but I can also channel all that into some really beautiful playing. So why can't it just be about that?
And that's what we need in this world is beautiful art made by, I'll use this word again, a diversity of people. Couldn't you have a symphony where not everybody agrees on everything? Because if everybody agrees on everything,
thought diversity.
That's bland. Yeah. Can we have that?
Yeah.
Well, James, I really appreciate you spending the time with me and telling your story, and I want to continue to follow it and wish you well, and hope we get to hear you play the clarinet on the big stage, and keep me informed if you have any gigs or records or anything cool like that. And I think that's a wrap for today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this.
All right, James. Talk to you soon. Good luck.
Thanks.
Okay, I hit the end button. Is it going to end? I think it's ending. So yeah, that was great. I appreciate everything. It was a lively conversation, and
Are we still live? It says live over here.
oh fuck! Oh shit, you're right.